All right. Hey, everyone. Alex Tanner here, talking shop with Outlier Firefighters, episode 30. I'm here with Eric Haskins, and we're going to talk a whole bunch of fun stuff tonight. I mean, that's what we usually do. We talk. That's the name of the show. But Eric, thanks for coming on. I'm excited to have you. We'll get into like your intro of where you come from in the fire service, and then we'll get into the topics. So we'll save some of that when we get to that point. So, what was your first exposure to the fire service? Wow, that's cool. That's quite like the Renaissance journey there. Lots of different things, but still to come to this, like that's an interesting path. Yeah, that's cool. That's pretty rare too. That like honestly, someone that gets you in, you end up working with them like that. Like most people don't end up that lucky where you the person that gets you in, you're with them. Oh, that's awesome. So that journey. So you only worked at the two departments then, or did you work anywhere else in the middle while you were kind of on your way to Nampa where you are now? Wow. Yeah, that's totally unorthodox. That's but wow, that's pretty cool. So how long have you been there now? Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. And I'm sorry I didn't mention in the beginning. You have Brotherhood in training, and you're a Georgia smoke diver, and we were going to talk about those things later. But I wanted to at least acknowledge that in the beginning. Those are some achievements from for you that are definitely worth mentioning. So sorry I didn't mention that in the intro. But when you were going through that, did Frank teach you about values and culture of the fire service, or did you learn that throughout your career from somebody else?
And I mean, this gym was like full of local firefighters. And, you know, looking back and like knowing these people, like they were all studs. And so, so spoiled because all I knew of the fire service around here was this group that I was surrounded by who are all like, complete studs, amazing officers. Like they've got a passion for the job like none other. So that was just like all I knew. I was like, oh man, like every firefighter must be like that. Like I want to surround myself with those people. um, and so, that was definitely kind of an introduction into, and then living with Frank and his family gave me a really good look at kind of what that shift, life looked like at home. Um, but I would say probably the biggest influence early in my career on like culture of the fire service was my senior man at Caldwell. So when I came into Caldwell, I had no previous fire experience, which part of that department was pretty uneasy about. They'd never hired someone without previous fire experience before. And so it was kind of, and then, there was this other half that was like, that's a huge opportunity for us. We can train them to do it our way, and we can show you that, we can do this. And so I was kind of, probably a bit of a test for them. And so I was super fortunate because the engine company that I started on was just packed with, some of the best firefighters like I've ever known to this date. And so between a guy named Jake Ives and Chase Jablonski, so Jake Ives was my senior man, and then Chase Jablonski was my driver. And those two probably had the biggest influence on me as far as introducing me to the works of Andy Fredericks, pushing me to get involved with, the local Treasure Valley Fools, introducing me like a Portland Firemanship Conference. And so it's like those guys just were driving me learning about all these things really early on. And again, like I didn't know any different, but now looking back, it's like, man, I was so spoiled because I was surrounded by like the most passionate and skilled firefighters around. And so like those dudes just put that in me. And then, as you go work for other companies and meet other firefighters, you're just like, okay, like not everyone is like that. So, but yeah, those guys made a big difference early on for me.
Yeah, I mean, finding those things uh, early is awesome. I can say personally, like I went to FDIC. I mean, I'm a second generation fireman, but like my dad was pretty good about keeping distance from putting point of views and stuff like that. And
Sure.
like I told you in the green room, like I was a volunteer, but we learned fire service values, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't the conferences like that. It wasn't Andy Fredericks. It wasn't like Bill Gustin. It wasn't those people. Those
Yeah.
names didn't really make their way around the fire station. The people that were there were pretty intelligent and knew what they were doing, but
Yeah.
there wasn't like a worldly view. And then
Dude,
when you step out of that, you're like, wow.
yeah, and that was it. So Caldwell was a small department, two stations, and three engine companies. And so to be just isolated and surrounded by that crew, it's like those were the only conversations being held, you know? And so early on, it's like, well, that's all I knew. Um, and again, looking back, it's like, man, so spoiled. But I think it really set me up for like a different trajectory um, that opened up my eyes and quickly, as you're going out to conferences, you're meeting people, realizing, it's the fire service is huge and we kind of talked earlier, but yet such a small world, right? And fortunately, people took me under their wing, introduced me to a lot of people and got me involved. A lot of people just said yes. It's like, hey man, can I help out with that? And they're like, yeah. And so it was cool. It was a fun and it was a fast start, and super lucky.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I mean, and you're able to give back too, and set people in the way. Like we were talking, and we're going to talk about your article that you wrote. But I mean, you know, it's cool that you recognize that, and now you're doing that yourself to try to help
Yeah,
other people. You know, get bit by that or get caught by that, and realize like what we're supposed to be, and that it makes sense. So it's cool that that's full circle. So we'll go right into your background in fitness and brotherhood and training, and I'm going to preface with you: I did not play team sports in high school. I
yeah,
did not know how to work out until I was a senior in high school, and all we did
sweet.
was power lift. That's it.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah,
it was just bro lifting. I never ran or did a bicycle or anything like that. And then
sure,
I think I played hockey later in life. I think I was like 19 or 20 out of school. That was my first like real like team sports kind of thing. So
awesome.
the reason like I wanted to, well, not the reason, but one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was like perspective in that. Like, there's people that aren't educated in some of the sports type fitness, which seems to line up very well with firefighter fitness.
Yeah.
And so, what was your background? I mean, you were a snowboarder. You said you played hockey, but what was your background in fitness growing up?
Yeah. I was about to start off saying, oh, like, just pretty typical. I played like every team sport, and it's like not typical, right? Like, but yeah, that was the way I grew up, man. I tried to play every sport possible. I was fortunate given the opportunity to do that growing up. So real early in my life, played ice hockey, spent pretty much every weekend in Canada with my dad, and um, would end up kind of switching gears, going snowboarding and everything that I was doing. So high school, real introduction into like weightlifting and stuff, but pretty similar to kind of like what you're talking about, right? I look back then and it's like, man, I remember, yeah, I was back squatting 400 pounds in high school, and it's like, no, you weren't, man. Like, you were kind of attempting to sit down a little bit with way too much weight, but we didn't know what we were doing. But I did like lifting weights, and then when snowboarding took off, really got involved with the national team and a lot of the training there. And I would be living up in, let's see, I was living in Calgary, Alberta, training with the Canadian team, and had a strength and conditioning coach. His name's Scott Wilgris, and I got he had these programs and everything we were doing, and I enjoyed the training like more than anything, and I became like a guinea pig for him, and I like there was something about it that I just dug. And so when I retired from snowboarding and ended up going to school, um, I ended up pursuing kinesiology and exercise science. I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist, and the closer I got to that, the more I realized I didn't want to do that. But I went to school, got a degree in exercise physiology. Would go on to get my CSCS, so Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, which is kind of the gold standard like certification for collegiate and pro sports. And then would end up opening up a gym. So kind of a background between snowboarding and ice hockey, and then my degree. I had a lot of like practical experience in training, and then the formal education, and then I came into the fire service. And one of the captains I worked with at Caldwell, said what he probably thought was like a real like menial statement to me, but it kind of like turned again, change a trajectory for me. It was, he's like, you gotta, I forget how it started, but conversation got brought up, and he's like, you gotta figure out kind of like what is it that like you bring to us. Like you have a unique background and a skill set that can help us in some way. Like what is that? He's like, you look over there, that guy's got 20 years turning a wrench as a mechanic. Like he's our go-to guy when something breaks down on the engine. That guy over there, his side job, he's been in construction for 30 years, right? Like he is the one that teaching us all about building construction, right? We had one guy that was well versed in sprinkler systems, and oh my god, he could tell you everything about sprinkler systems. Pretty handy on commercial fire alarms or water flows, when like he knew everything about it, right? So all that's to say is like, what is it that you bring? And I was like, man, well, I've got this background, and so that was kind of a thing of like, all right, like I can start working at least like fitness. Like, do you guys want to like work on some strength and conditioning? And that really kind of kicked it off of being like, all right, here's where I can be an asset and fit in. And then kind of like away we went, and Brotherhood and training and those things kind of took off.
So for people that aren't aware of what Brotherhood and Training is, can you explain it?
Yeah, so Brotherhood and Training is a company that I mentioned Frank earlier, um, that we started years ago, when we got called in to help with a like fire academy like fitness, and so we were developing programs for local fire departments, and we kind of formed this company, um, that just allowed us to do that. And so real early on, we got called in by one of the largest departments like in our area, and they're like, hey, you guys came well or highly recommended. Here's the issues we're dealing with. Do you think you could help us with that? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, here's what we would do, and kind of laid it out, and they're like, okay, let's do it. And then that really kind of kick started early on Brotherhood and Training, where we've worked with a lot of departments, and our focus early on was a lot of like fire academy, like recruit academy PT programs, and how to effectively do that, and getting away from this old school mentality of like running them into the ground, beating them up. It's like, no, like there's a better way to do this. um and we've been pretty successful at that, and Brotherhood and Training from there has just turned into we just get a lot of requests for all sorts of things. So
Cool. Um, yeah, one of the things that I'd read you mentioned was training was always, or sorry, fitness became a punishment, right, in
yeah,
fire academies, and changing that mindset of getting people out of that. So what are some, obviously, you don't have to share the entire thing, but like what are some key points of what you've kind of done to shift away from that punishment style to more of,
sure.
I guess, a longevity fitness style?
Yeah, so real early on, and we do a couple different things for departments. We've just developed custom programs, that we just hand over to them, um, that typically runs into issues on their end because their trainers like have a hard time delivering it. So we do a lot of like seminars where we or train the trainer type things, where we go in, work with their trainers, teach them how to coach, where to look, correcting errors, and really focusing on the movement. And then I do a lot of programming, lecturing, and some exercise science so that they can deliver it. But take like real early on in the academies, we want to have this conversation about fitness and its purpose in the academy. And so you got to build that trust right away. I mean, like week one is our opportunity to do that. You show up and they're like, oh my God, like they're gonna give us burpees and they're gonna run us. And like this is the thing that like most of them coming into the academy is nervous about isn't like any of the fire training. It's like, oh my God, it's gonna be like the military and all that. And so that first workout is your opportunity to like lay the foundation, have a conversation. Um, we will not use fitness as punishment here. And that's something that you got to get the rest of like the cadre on board with too. Because if they start dishing out push ups and those things, then that's going to work against you. And so, you work with that. But early on, it's like, we will not use fitness as a punishment here. This should be fun. The purpose of all of this is to supplement the rest of the fire training that you're doing. It makes no sense for me to beat you up first thing, day one, which then makes it impossible for you to work on the skills, be it forcible entry, hose advancement, ladder throws. Like that's what we're focused on. The fitness is to supplement that, and our focus and priority is proper movement patterns so that we can one increase work capacity so you can get the job done, but two, we want to prevent injuries. We're investing in you. So I need you to develop these habits, these movement patterns that are going to make you safe on the fire ground. And so you just establish that right away. And then you got to hold that for the rest of the academy.
Yeah, yeah. How, and then how do you carry that over? I guess into the I guess it's a cultural thing. Maybe it is, and maybe it's not, at an organization. But do you feel what you can you do to set up a recruit to go to their department now and continue what you've taught them? Do you feel like it's benefited them in that way?
Yeah, and much of the programming we do is focused on, one, we teach them how to move properly early on. And so, we kind of focus on the mechanics, how to correct them, and only after like it really looks good do we start like adding intensity, right? And then as the academy moves forward, like some of the last workouts we do is cadre show up, the instructors show up, we'll bring other engine companies in, and we give them an assignment. It's like your assignment is to write our workouts for next week and take us through them. And so it's a nice kind of final, test or whatever to see what they've learned. Um, and then if they can put together workouts and take people through it. So now, with the hope being that when they go online, they can do that with their crew and start kind of like pushing from the bottom up. Like, hey guys, I know how to build a workout. I know how to like take you guys through a warm up. I know how to make this fun. And hey, Cap, I've got an idea. Go through, take you through this workout. And so we try to give them the tools to do that. That's one of the purposes of the PT program, so that as we put them out into the wild, they've got the skills to then work, basically be, force multipliers within their companies, within their stations, and within the department. And that's one of the ways we can build a culture of fitness, right?
Yeah, and making it life essentially, like you're
Yeah.
building it into their life. Would your is your program, is it mostly, and pardon my ignorance, but is it mostly that functional fitness type of training? Where there's maybe some bars on bumper plates and that, or do you guys work into the more traditional, I guess like an Arnold style, right? Like as I called it earlier in the green room, the bro
Sure.
lifting. But
Sure.
is there a balance between those things, or is the PT that you're building mostly one style? How do you deliver it?
Yeah. So for say like for our department and some of our joint academy, it really comes down to like what equipment do we have available to us. And in working with departments that have minimal budget, like no equipment, like sandbags have become like the go-to tool. And they're so versatile and like really affordable that we've had a lot of success with that. So it's like if all you have money for is sandbags, like we can do a lot with that. We can do strength training, we can do conditioning. We've got a skills complex that we can teach like fundamental movement patterns with. And so, we build that in, but then like our department has started investing in, a gym down in our training grounds. And over the years, that went from just having sandbags to now we've got squat racks, we've got barbells, we've got bumpers, which now opens up the playbook. And so now, we start with the real basics with a sandbag, and then we transition to the barbell. And it's like taught them a back squat with a sandbag, which is uh, significantly more forgiving than like a barbell. And then when we go to something like that, it's a really easy transition. We teach them, how to bail properly, like what's an appropriate amount of weight, how to judge that, how to spot those things. So now when they go again out to their station, it's like we've equipped them with the tools. So we have had people with no background whatsoever in strength and conditioning come into an academy, and they leave um, with a real working knowledge of like you put them in a gym and they can figure it out and get something going. As far as the program goes, it's broad. So we need to one build in like fundamental movements, and we can do that multiple ways. In whether it's like isolated barbell training and that we can use sandbags. We then open it up. We want to work on their aerobic capacity. So we've got some zone two training. We've got a little bit of running. We don't hit them with volume. It's very like low intensity. And then we also work in like an O course. And so that O course, you know, week one is very simple. We're just getting them in gear, and like it's literally a workout with pushing sleds in gear on air. And as that program progresses, we're now starting to add skills that they are learning in their academy. So it's like, all right, we work with the training division. All right, just went over forcible entry. Okay, now we're going to put a forcible entry prop into the O course. And so, this way we're one building like general fitness and some of the sandbag barbell stuff, but then we're also building real like specific fireground fitness, tying it in when we get to the O course and more fire specific movements, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. Do you work like breath control or heart rate management into it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I give a class on the physiology and psychology of the fireground. A lot of it is about that like acute stress response and arousal control and breath work and on how to bring that down. And so we absolutely start putting that in. I teach that class early in the academy, and then the structured workouts are great opportunities to start driving home like those principles as you're working around with the recruits. Their face might be white, and you can grab them and be like, hey, like, let's get some box breathing going. Like, let's slow down. When you take those stairs, I want you to work on like nasal breathing. And like, that's going to bring your heart rate down and it's going to get you out of that like lactate threshold or an unsustainable pace. And so we start using these skills that can be used on the fire ground, like nasal breathing. Um, and we start working that into the workouts, if that makes sense.
No, that's great. I'm very new to that. I was never taught any of that stuff, and I happened to read a book, the book that Gillespie and Rick George, and I'm
Yeah,
drawing a blank on the third author, but I got to see them speak at FDIC last year. On top of reading that book, it blew my mind. Totally blew my mind.
yeah,
No one ever taught me how to breathe, and I thought it was because, like I said, I didn't play. I mean, I played baseball up until I was probably like 12 or 13. But
sure.
outside of that, they don't teach you. Obviously, why would they teach you that stuff at that age? But I felt like maybe I missed out on that with an athleticism thing, and it was so interesting. And like I've shared that with people at work when we've had a pure fitness trainer come in on Saturdays for us if you're on shift, and like experimented with that. And so I'm just a guy. Like I said, I'm not I'm not Mr. Athlete. I never claimed to be.
Sure.
So like I'm just kind of a normal dude in that, and it totally works. And it's cool that you guys teach that early because it totally translates. Like the skip breathing thing kind of works for some people, and they'll talk about
Yeah.
that. But the box and triangle breathing straight up works. Like
Well,
it's pretty
and
cool.
and and so it's a valuable tool. And so I can get up there and I can give a lecture, right? And I used to teach a class with Rick, um, and we went over that. And so you can give them theory, you can lecture them, but you bring it home when you put it into practice. And so the PT and the workouts, like that's your ability to really capture them and cement that. So the nasal breathing is really good for stress management, arousal control. um, but a good friend of mine, Chris Hinshaw, is one of the world's leading like endurance coaches, right? And he talks about like nasal breathing. It's like a physiological break. So you can only work at about 60% of your VO2 max, like breathing through your nose. And so you could have no background in pacing or any of this at all. And I can teach you this. It's like, all right, you're working at your aerobic threshold if you can breathe through your nose. So if you're going to go long and you want to stay at a sustainable pace, just breathe through your nose. And the second you have to reach for air out of your mouth, that is an indicator that I'm now turning over into an unsustainable pace, like or reaching my lactate threshold. So that is just that opportunity to slow it down. Or if it's like, hey man, so like on the job, right? Um, Overhaul. It's like, all right, if you can breathe through your nose, man, you're gonna last a ton of time on that bottle. But if you're doing overhaul and all of a sudden your mouth breathing, it's like, hey man, like that's an indicator to start slowing down. We can start using that as just our pacing, and you can take somebody with no experience whatsoever, and it's like there's our tool.
Yeah.
So breathe through your nose if you need to pace. But if you're on the home stretch and it's like, no, man, I need to push down this hallway, I get water on it and it's done and I'm out. It's like, yeah, man, I'm a mouth breather all the way. I'm getting as much air as I can. And then once the fire is at a point where I can slow down, then I'm back into, nasal breathing to try to conserve air. And then obviously like firefighter survival, we want to lower that heart rate and start working on nasal breathing. So it's a tool that you can use in a bunch of different places. Um, and utilizing that in say like a PT program is a great way to kind of bring those skills into something as simple as a workout.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is, and it's totally something anyone can just try and experience for themselves. That's what I love the way that you phrase that. Basically, you can breathe through your nose, then you're at a good pace, essentially, right? And then
Yeah.
once you get outside of that, you need to recognize it. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
So yeah, it's like for our O course, we start off on stairs, and so most of the time we let them like do it on their own and without like a lot of cues before, so they can like kind of feel these things. And then the next time we send them, it's like, all right, I want you to nasal breathe all the way up those stairs, and just that will keep them taking the stairs at a sustainable pace. They make it up, they come down, and then they have the ability to keep working afterwards. And they're like, dude, it was a totally different experience after that. And I was able to keep working at a little higher pace versus, man, when I took those stairs, I was breathing through my mouth. I got back down to the bottom and I'm like, I was crushed. I was done. And so it's like, what a valuable just tool to use on the fire ground of like, hey man, like I'm pushing too hard here. There's a lot of work to be done. And I'm not an asset if I go through my bottle and all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I'm done. You
Yeah,
know?
you could be the smartest guy in the world if you can't make it to the room. Then
Yeah. Yeah.
it's pointless. Yeah.
Yep.
So uh, for the firefighter, right, on shift, online, however you want to phrase it. The article you wrote was on different forms of strength training, and I kind of wanted to talk
Sure.
about both different forms of strength training and then eventually different forms of conditioning in terms of like endurance training and ways to do that. So, and people can read your article, and I'm going to share it because it made it up on Fire Engineering's website now, so it wasn't before.
Okay.
So
Cool.
I did check to make sure that it was. So I'll share it so people can read your article. But a brief synopsis of the different forms of strength training and when they come into play and how firefighters should work those into their routine.
Yes. So I think, are you talking about like the methods?
Yeah, you had three
Okay.
methods.
Yeah. So, like you've got maximal strength, and then you've got like the max effort method, which produces maximal strength. You've got the repeated effort or the repetition method, and then you've got the dynamic effort method, which develops explosive power. For most people, everyone knows the repetition method. This is your typical like 5x5, 3x8. Like the goal of the repetition method and how it builds strength is simply mechanical volume. I am working to or near failure, which has the effect of like hypertrophy, meaning the muscles get stronger by getting bigger. And so, like, that's what most people do, right? Um, there's a few downsides to that. Is that we're leaving other methods on the table. So I mentioned the maximal effort method, and that's lifting a weight to or near like max effort. So think like one rep max, and we can kind of dive into like 3 rep max is close, but like a true definition would be like your 1 rep max, and that recruits maximal like motor units. So the max effort method is really training your brain and your nervous system to recruit everything it has to produce the highest force possible. That plays huge in the fire service as we're lifting 400-pound patients, right? It's like, that's great. Like you can do 200 pounds for 10 reps, but right now I need you to do 400 pounds for one. And if you don't train that way, then just like reps doesn't equal the one rep max, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of that continuum is the dynamic effort. And that's where we're lifting submaximal weights at the highest amount of speed possible. And really this is just developing our ability for explosive power. So think of things like forcible entry, right? It is, Sam Hiddle talks about impulse with forcible entry. And it's our ability to deliver that force like in a moment's notice as quickly as possible. And so these different methods allow us to build different, like what Louis Simmons would call like special strengths, to give us this like total like holistic approach to building strength. Whether it's maximal effort, so max effort, one rep max, we're lifting something very heavy just one time. We need to be able to like brace ourselves so we don't get injured and recruit everything at once. The repetition method, like we need to build body armor, right? We need to get a little bit bigger because you're just flat out going to get beat down. The second we put your turnouts on, the second, the load carriage, if you are 5% body fat with very little like cushion, man, like this job is going to beat you up. So using something like the repetition method, which is like your classic bodybuilding, allows us to build some muscle, add a little bit of size in areas that can create a little body armor, right? And then that dynamic effort, light and fast, that's what's going to give us our explosive power. And we see those different special strengths play out in something like the fire service, like really in everything we do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So like trying to have a program then that touches on all those things, right, is kind of something that would
Yeah.
benefit most firefighters, right? Like,
Yeah. And so, it's called, if you've heard like the conjugate method, it's made famous here in the States by a guy named Louis Simmons, started Westside Barbell, produced, arguably the strongest people, especially like power lifters. He's worked with, you know, every sport imaginable. And so, but this style of training actually came from the Soviets. And so really kind of like the West is, what he would say is like 50 to 60 years behind the rest of the world in strength and conditioning because we're still so focused on just getting bigger, right? We could probably blame that on one dude that came over from Austria named Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like he came over and everyone, hey man, like, yeah, I'd like to look like him too. But the conjugate method, and its simplest thing is, we're raising multiple qualities at once instead of just focusing on one. So like a classic Western periodization program goes in these phases, right? We're going to start off with maybe like we're just working on muscular endurance. And then we're going to do hypertrophy. And then we're going to go through a strength and power phase. That works well with like organized sports where you can plan out this program. It's like, all right, we're going to go through this program for 16 weeks. And at the end, I'm going to get you to peak either for this game, this match, or on a specific date. For the fire service, that doesn't work. Like, you need all of that. You need endurance, you need strength, you need power, you need size at any given moment. So utilizing, say, a program like like a conjugate program is now using all of these different methods. We're raising multiple qualities at once and we're doing it all in conjunction with one another. And it's optimal for the fire service because on any given day, you're bringing all those capabilities and it allows us to keep it going throughout the whole like year, through our whole life without really having to take like an off season, if that
yeah,
kind
I
of
get
makes
what you're
sense.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So something like a conjugate style program works well for tactical populations, especially for fire service, where it's like, I need all those capabilities on any given day because I'm not training for something 16 weeks from now. I'm training for something that could come in, say, 3 hours.
Yeah. So
So,
then, what would you say for the balance of those things? So, like cardiovascular endurance, what would be some go-to methods for developing that?
Yeah. So, probably some of the listeners, zone two training, if you've heard of that, has kind of become really popular. And really like zone two is just pure like aerobic training. So you're training at a heart rate or an intensity that is not producing lactate or, these fatigue causing properties. And, um, the adaptations that take place are the cardiovascular health, body fat, loss of body fat and those things. And zone two training isn't just for the marathon runner and those things. And so that's kind of something that's changed, you know, over the years is this thought of on the continuum, if I do endurance training, it's going to make me weak. Or if I just, do strength, it's going to like kill my endurance. And so the magic is in that recipe of how do I combine these in a certain way so that I can, continue to raise my strength without sacrificing my endurance. Zone two training is really kind of where that magic happens. And so, uh, we talked about nasal breathing. So that is one tool that you can use to kind of identify if you're in zone two. So if you can breathe through your nose, you are training in zone two. Um, um, Zone two aerobic training is typically like single modality. So think of like anything that's like running, biking, rowing, anything with like the ing. It's like that's the sort of stuff that we're going to build in like an aerobic capacity with. And then if you're like a heart rate guy, a real easy way to figure out your zone two is 180 minus your age. So everybody kind of knows like max heart rate, 220 minus your age puts you in the ballpark of max heart rate. Well, it's called the Maftone method. And he came up with a real simple equation that's 180 minus your age puts you in the ballpark of what your aerobic threshold is. So take that 180 minus your age. If you've got, an Apple Watch heart rate monitor, you can use that number as your ceiling. And whatever you're doing, you're just going to spend time underneath that. That's going to develop that endurance. It's going to develop that aerobic capacity. And the benefit on the strength side is as you build your aerobic capacity, it's also going to improve your ability to recover. So if I'm putting this out in a program, I may do lift 3 times a week, like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, keep it simple. And then Tuesday, Thursday are going to be my easy like zone 2 days. The intensity is so low that it'll act as a nice buffer or recovery for my lifting days. But it's also not for nothing because I'm building my aerobic capacity and getting that other side of the continuum. So that's kind of how we approach that 2 sides of that continuum. And we do the same thing in Recruit Academy where it's like we're doing our strength training or our functional or more high intensity stuff, maybe 3 times a week. And then that Tuesday, Thursday is a simple 20, 30-minute zone 2 run. We make that fun. Like if you can like call a cadence or something like that, if you can talk while running, you're in zone 2. So if you can get like cadre or instructors involved, you can Google like running cadences. We've come up with some fun ones, and we just take the recruits on a 20-minute run. And as long as we can talk, then it's like we're there. And so that's kind of how we work that into the academy. And then that's how we continue to build our endurance. And the nice thing is it doesn't beat you up. 20 to 30 minutes per session, like that's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, it's cool. Well, one of the things, I guess, what I was starting to base it. I'd love to talk about smoke divers here. So last year, I went to a class called Red Under Fire in the Illinois Fire Service Institute, which is like arguably one of like the most challenging things you can do, in the fire service. And
Sure.
I was, as I expressed my background in fitness, like I'm definitely, I wasn't like an out of shape guy, but I definitely wasn't where I needed to be, and I took that as an opportunity, to have something to work towards. And I based a lot of what I was doing off of some of the Georgia smoke diver training stuff. And one of those was that run, that 1.5 mile run.
Hmm.
And so and another guy at work is starting to kind of do the same thing, and we're trying to figure out getting our run time down. So like speaking for me personally, like I've plateaued now at 12:30 for the mile and a half,
Okay.
and like trying to get I think and I thought maybe I was educated a little bit, but maybe I'm still kind of ignorant to Georgia smoke divers in general. But one of the things was that I saw in there was a 10:30 mile and a half. That
Yeah.
right, and so that I put that on the board, and that's my goal. So when we're talking about those, the zone two, obviously zone two doesn't get you to that
Sure.
10:30.
Yeah.
So what are methods of running training to get you to that 10:30? What can
Yeah.
someone do?
Re- really good question. And the common kind of thing is, all right, so I want to get good at my mile and a half run. So what do you do? And it's not pick on you. So
No, you're good.
I'll just use someone else. So most people will, I want to get good at my mile and a half run. So I'm going to go run a mile and a half as fast as I can every single day. And what commonly happens is they don't see a lot of progress, or they see a little bit, and then they plateau. And the approach that you want to work with, say on like say endurance training, is there's really two aspects of that mile and a half run. So you've got the distance, which is your mile and a half, and then you've got your time. So your target being 10:30. Um, you want to approach, and we have to figure out like what's the thing holding you back from achieving your 10:30 mile and a half. Is it the distance that just makes you tired, or is it the speed that like you can't like hold on for? And so instead of just doing a mile and a half run as hard as I can, I'm going to now split that up, and on one day I'm just going to work on volume. So I'm just going to work, pace isn't a real issue, or isn't a real focus for this. I'm going to go out on the slowest run possible, and I might just go for 3 miles. I like to double it, where it's just like, man, all I'm doing is training the body to handle the volume. All right. So that might be one of my run workouts. Now I need to attack, like, say, the speed side. And so I'm going to figure out my pace. So take that 10-30 mile pace, and we want to start running intervals at that pace. Depending on where you are and how far off of that pace you are, so like 12:30, that might be something where your speed workout might be, 6 to 8 100-meter runs at that 10:30 mile and a half pace. Is this making
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, I get what you're saying.
So that speed workout, we'll say we'll do, 6 by 100 at that 10:30 mile and a half pace, rest as needed between them. Your only goal is to hit that pace target for every one of those 100 meters. Like, so if I'm on a track with you, that's it. It's your decision when to go back and start your next interval. If I'm your coach, I'm going to be timing those and keeping an eye on it. And so it's like, all right, you were successful for your 6 by 100 with like a 3 minute rest in between those intervals. All right, that next speed workout, I'm going to cut your rest down to 2:30. And if you're successful there, I'm going to cut it down to 2 minutes. And so now I'm starting to take away that rest. We're maintaining the speed. And so just to make it easy, imagine if I put you through a workout that was 24 intervals of 100-meter sprints at a 10:30 pace, and you started with a 5 minute rest between all of those, this workout would take forever. It'd be miserable. But for the example, then my goal is just to start reducing that rest as long as you are successful until your last workout is 2,400 meters with no rest at that 10:30 pace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So that's how I would build like a progression, but we have to attack it from those two sides. I have to make sure that your body can handle the volume. And so we work on that on one day, really easy. Pace doesn't matter. We're just getting the volume in. And then we're going to hit speed on, say, another day to really start honing in that tempo. So if we're looking at a pyramid, that program kind of comes to the peak where you're achieving 2,400 meters, 10:30, and that would be the end of the progression for you.
Do you think that same I guess thought process, because that really makes that's very easy to follow and understand.
Yeah,
Do you think that same thought process could apply to, say, like other workouts such as like burpees or push-ups, or
totally.
right? And you could kind of attack it in that same way.
Yeah. So, I got to give credit because I don't have like an endurance background. So, all like everything I know about aerobic capacity, what I've developed over the years, and that comes from Hinshaw. And so, these are the methods he uses with like the world's best. He works with a lot of CrossFit Games athletes, and so I've been fortunate to learn these methods from him and then apply it, say, to what we're doing in our fire service training. But so, say you're doing a like a standard like PST, right? 2 minute push up test. All right. Um, and your target is, we'll just say 50 push ups in 2 minutes. We have to figure out like what is the limiting factor that doesn't allow you to get to the 50 push ups? Is it your strength? Or is it the fact that I just don't have the endurance to go for 2 minutes? And so, like, can you do a push up? I'm just asking.
Yeah.
So I don't think, like, if you can do a push up, then you have the strength to do a push up. So what's holding you back from getting 50 in 2 minutes? It's just the sheer volume.
Yeah.
So how do you train to achieve 2 minutes of straight push ups? Well, we have to figure out a way, because like most people, like our mile and a half run, is like, I'm just going to set a timer for 2 minutes and I'm going to do as many push ups as I can. Most of the time, that ends up with like elbow pain. People don't see any progress. They get an overuse injury because they do push ups every day. And then, they, they give up or they wind up hurt. Instead, I want you practicing doing 2 minutes of push ups. So, what I might do is I'm going to have you do 5 push ups. So, we'll start a timer for 2 minutes for this workout. You're going to do 5 push ups. Then you're going to roll over onto your back and do 20 seconds of, say, like a floor press. So, you could be holding like a PVC pipe in your hand. So, you roll over and you're just doing a floor press. And then at the end of that 20 seconds, you're going to roll back over. You're going to do, 5-10 seconds of push-ups. And then you're going to roll back over and do a floor press. So what we've done is we've changed the weight or modified it and lightened it up so that you could keep doing push-ups, because that PVC pipe weighs nothing, but your body doesn't realize it because you're still doing the same movement pattern. Is this making sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get you to do 2 minutes of push-ups, and I've just changed the loading throughout. And so, we can change those intervals. So the workout would be, we're going to do 10 seconds of push-ups, 50 seconds of floor press, 2 rounds. So there's your 2 minute interval. If you are successful and you can do 10 seconds of push-ups with that 50-second of floor press, 2 rounds, then that next workout, I might do, let's do 15 seconds of push-ups, 45 seconds of floor press with a PVC pipe or just pushing up the air, 2 rounds. If you're successful there, let's do 20 seconds of push-ups. So doing the same thing. Now, as we progress you over the weeks doing this, you're going to get to a point where you're doing 55 seconds of push-ups with a 5-second rest in between for 2 rounds. And then the final one, I've got 2 minutes of push-ups. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
I like having a whiteboard because it's like easier to write this up.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, but I'm following you. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Just, again, we're breaking it up into the two components. Is it the strength or the endurance or the volume? And once we can figure that out, we can start working on what is the thing that's holding you back.
Wow. That's a really cool way to break that down. So, putting all that into context of smoke divers, so we can kind of talk about that. So, for those that don't know what Georgia Smoke Divers or that program is, can you give a brief explanation of what that is and what it means, and quite frankly, the achievement that you have achieved by completing it, by surviving it? So, Yeah.
Uh, real simple. Georgia Smoke Divers is a 60-hour course that focuses on teaching firefighter survival, search and rescue, RIT, and developing critical decision making skills in high stress scenarios. Uh, Again, that's done over 6 days. Down in Georgia, they're running two courses. It's widely considered, the most difficult training in the fire service. That's up for whoever to decide. Um, and the attrition rate historically is anywhere from 50 to like 75%. So it's real similar to like the attrition rate that you see in like special forces and those types of things. Because of that, it's kind of gotten that people like to call it the Navy SEALs of the fire service, which I think does a huge disservice to the Navy SEALs. But Yeah, with the attrition rate and the difficulty and the demands that you go through to learn those skills, and the way that they deliver that learning environment is a big achievement for a lot of people, especially with not a lot of people get through. People train for a year, 2 years at a time to try to get through it, and especially with like the rise of social media and more people learning about it, like the application process has really gotten difficult to get in because everyone's trying to get in. So
So, what drew you to it? And um, well, we'll start with that. Yeah. What drew you to
yeah,
Georgia Smoke Divers?
uh, so I was at Caldwell. I walked in. I was in the station. I walked by a room, and one of my buddies was like, "Oh yeah, have you met this guy?" I was working, I was doing PT for the Boise Fire Department, and he's like, "Hey, have you met this guy? He's a Georgia smoke diver. He just, he's in the recruit academy." I was like, "Yeah, like what's a Georgia smoke diver?" And he's like, "Oh man, they're the Navy SEALs of the fire service." And I was like, what? And so of course I was like, that sounds awesome. Googled it, came up on their website, and was like, it's very, this may or may not be done on purpose, but there is only a certain amount of information available. Um, and so trying to put it together, I was like, man, they're like, this looks super hard. This looks awesome. And so I did a lot of research, came across some like YouTube videos from like the 70s or 80s, and was like, man, I want to go do that. And so that was kind of what introduced me to it. And what really drew me to it was I was interested in finding the most difficult training in the fire service. Um, I wanted to be tested. I wanted to be put in a place that challenged my skill set, but that also, um, would challenge me in a way and develop like these skills. Like, I was really searching for something, and back then there wasn't a lot of information available. So I kind of just took this guess. I'm like, I think this is what I'm looking for. And at that time, no one had gone through from Idaho. I knew nobody about it. And so, like, I signed up for it, did my best to train for this thing that I had no idea about, and went down there. And it was everything that I was looking for and more. So,
Yeah.
no, it's kind of a broad answer, but
No, it's okay. So I do
yeah,
want to specify. Like, I know what you're saying. There's the information about it's not easily researchable, if I could phrase it that way. And I think that's by design. So like, I don't want to just blatantly ask you what it's like. You know what I mean? Because I think that I kind of respect that. You know what I
sure.
mean? That exists, but more about like, you know, what did you? I mean, it sounds like you really didn't like change much in your training routine to get to it, or did you like, um, in preparation to go down there and do it? Did you change much with how you were approaching it?
Yeah, I did. And so at that time, when I was trying to figure out the like the physical aspect of it, they just had one sheet that had like a couple of example workouts on it. And from that sheet, I was like, okay, this deck of cards workout. There seems to be a big emphasis on some body weight exercises. They talk about this mile and a half run, and there seems to be an emphasis on being good and getting comfortable in your gear. And so from that, and then also, I brought my own stuff into it. Was I wanted this to be hell week. I wanted this to be the most difficult, like physical training I'd ever gone through. So part of me took that sheet and then came up with what is the most difficult fire service class program that I could come up with my in my head. Okay, that's what I'm going to. I'm going to train for that. And so my training at that time, I was doing, probably CrossFit 5, 6 days a week. It's in pretty good shape. But then looking at that sheet, noticing like the bias towards body weight and running, I did switch my program to, I was still lifting weights a couple times a week, but really placed a high emphasis on stuff like, push ups, up downs, and then getting my mile and a half run. And so from that, developed my own program. I went down there and, maybe I just got lucky. But once they started dishing it out, I was like, okay, like I got this.
Yeah.
That's not to say that it was easy, but definitely the prep work that I put in on body weight exercises, running, and training a lot in gear set me up for success there.
No, that's great. No, and you got to try to find a way to take Rid under fire, because I obviously I'm not a Georgia smoke diver, so I don't know in terms of comparison. That's not in the same fitness level, but like that's what drew me to that class was that if, at least for Illinois, like it is as hard as it gets. It beats the crap out of you,
Sure.
and like mentally, can you get through it? And that's always what's, and it's still in my mind, it's kind of my misogi to do
Yeah.
Indiana smoke divers,
Yeah.
but like
Man, I'm glad you brought that up because that's really what I think like Georgia is for a lot of people
yeah,
is the fire service like Misogi,
yeah,
right? Um, and you gotta. It's unlikely that you'll complete it, but there's a chance. And if you do, it has the ability to change your life, and in this sense, like change your career.
yeah.
And so, for many, I would say that's exactly what the smoke diver program is for people.
There's just something about that follows it. I took a random training and there was a guy that was an Indiana smoke diver, and I don't even know what department he works for. He was in one of my other groups, and he had the patch on his bunker gear, and I was like, "Holy shit!" And
Yeah,
talked to him for like a couple minutes, but there's just something like I don't know. There's just something about it, like what we're talking about. But um,
so
nutrition wise, did you change nutrition? So one of the things, I guess, context here. When I went down for Rid Under Fire, I changed my nutrition in the way that I would recover when I got back because you're doing 12-hour days of live burn, like constant like work for that. And
yeah.
I get back and I did like a cranberry juice and like a whole bunch of liquid recovery and all that other stuff. And I listened to Basil Ibrahim was on another podcast, and they were talking about Georgia smoke divers. How did you approach though nutrition for that specific program?
Yeah, I mean, coming into it, my nutrition was pretty good from my athletic background, everything that I was training for. I came in and I brought some stuff with me, but in the lead up to class, and they had resources on their website with a nutrition guide, right? And so I looked at that, and there seemed to be a big focus on just like flat out just like caloric intake. and hydration. Um, so as far as leading up to it, like I didn't really change anything. And then down there, um, it was, they do a really good job of, I think they're from the outsiders, they're like, that place is dangerous. They're going to kill somebody. But, for the people that have gone through it, they just know everything that they're doing down there to keep the students safe, and is a very well orchestrated machine. So they've got a medical team down there, that they're testing your hydration, they're monitoring your hydration, they're having you pee in a cup, um, and then you're also keeping track of your calories every single day. You go through a nutrition class, and you go through that nutrition guide to figure out how many calories do I need to eat a day, and those things. And so the program really gives the candidate or the student coming in the tools to say, hey, we know that people that fall behind on their hydration or that fall behind on their calories typically don't make it. And it is your job to go through this nutrition guide, figure that out, and make sure you stay up on it. And so for me down there, like I eat pretty clean. And when I got down there, it was like, man, that Five Guys has a double bacon cheeseburger with a large sweet potato fry and like a chocolate shake that I can get 2,000 calories in right now. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it. So down there,
Huh.
um, it was just all about calories in,
That's
and it was
interesting.
by any means necessary, which I had no problem doing. But the people that do fall behind on calories, yeah, absolutely. They run out of steam, man. Like they just don't have the energy to keep going. So something like that. It's calories by any means necessary.
So is that like during the trainings? Are you like having, I don't know, like nuts or something? Well, so and again, frame of reference from me doing Rid Under Fire was that I walked around with a bag, and there was one day where my hydration did fail me, and I pretty much almost passed out. I got cooked.
Yeah,
Um, but like I was walking around with protein bars and nuts, and I was constantly snacking. Is that and I realized after the first day that I needed to do that, and obviously I don't know again if it's really quite the same, and I'm not. I know that
sure.
I'm not in diver's shape because I'm attempting the workouts, But is that something that's part of that? Or you're talking about trying to keep your caloric intake up? Are you eating while you're doing the training? Are you trying to keep that going? Or is that a strategy? Strategy's a
Well,
horrible word, but
so like I brought snacks with me,
yeah,
um, and again, I was painting this picture of what I hoped this class would be. I hoped it was going to be so gnarly, um, that they weren't going to let me eat what I want. Like I painted this whole picture, right?
yeah.
So I brought, at the time, like, you ever heard of like Fuel for Fire?
No, I
So,
haven't.
so like, now these pouches are like everywhere, right? So I brought a lot of stuff with me that was like easily consumable that I could keep in my pockets. So like pouches, like a trick from the old like snowboarding days was like, man, like a bag of gummy bears. Like if you just need to keep your blood sugar up, like that's cool. You want to pay $100 for like a box of like really expensive like goo gels, right?
Yeah,
That the elite marathoners use. Like, or you could carry a bag of $5 gummy bears in your pocket, and it's gonna do a pretty good job. So, um, but they feed you really well down there. Um, and trying to protect the integrity of the program. There is definitely, if you fall behind on calories, that is totally on you.
yeah.
It is not because you haven't been provided with every opportunity to stay up on it.
Interesting.
If that, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I get what you're saying.
yeah.
Cool. Um, what time of year did you go? I mean,
So
Georgia's weather's kind of
yeah. So
Hit or miss.
Everyone will say that their class was the hardest,
Sure.
which mine actually was. So I went in the fall class, so it was November, and it was freezing rain the entire week. Um, and I would say that added a real nice element to it. That man, once you're in like freezing turnouts, like it's all good. It's just a wetsuit, you know. Getting out of it and then having to get back in, like, oh man, like you saw a couple people break because they just couldn't handle that. But yeah, so I went down in November. Again, they are a well-oiled machine. The dates and the times of year are very specific because with how demanding that course is, it'd be too dangerous to put it in the middle of the summer or to be in any time of year where it's like heat would be an
Yeah.
added factor there. So again, they're trying to mitigate every means possible to provide the safest learning experience and course for the candidates. So
That's cool. Did you go down with any friends, or did you go down by yourself and then meet? I mean, obviously you connect with people when you go to something like that, but just by yourself.
yeah, I don't think a few people from my department knew that I was going. There was only one person in my department that actually like knew kind of what it was, and that was that guy that kind of tipped me off on it. But yeah, I went by myself.
Yeah,
I had I had no idea what I was getting into. I had this idea of what I hoped it would be. But yeah, got down there, and what I can say is that the guy that ended up being my roommate and my partner for the week, the experience and everything that we went through, he's now become like one of my best friends. I probably we see each other, maybe once a year when we go back to instruct. But something like that, created one of my like best friends, somebody I talk to on a weekly basis, and then every year going back is just a community of like-minded, firefighters that are fired up for the job that hold themselves to a different standard. And so, you know, um, David Rhodes talks a lot about Georgia for the instructor side being a place where guys can come back and get a good recharge, right? So throughout the year, you're getting beaten down, getting frustrated, like, whatever it is. Georgia, there's something about it that offers a really good recharge. You go down there, you surround yourself in that environment, you give back, and then you just come back and you're like, you're fired up. And so it's become a special thing, um, you know, once or twice a year just to go just get that recharge.
oh,
So
that's
and then you
awesome.
go down there and you see some of your best friends that you only see once or twice a year.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. How many times now have you gotten to go back and instruct?
I typically go back. I think I've been maybe 5 times now. I go back at least once a year. It's tough for me to go twice. They've got another class coming up, but can't make that just with my family. It's a long travel from Idaho,
Oh yeah,
and then it's very difficult for me to leave my family, my wife and my 2 kids, to be away for a week, even though I'm like down there having like the time of my life. It's hard for me to be away from the kids. So once a year is kind of what my wife and I have agreed to, and so that's about as much as I can do.
I feel you. I definitely do. I'm getting at that point where traveling for classes is becoming more and more regular, and even just going to for us like Champaign IFSI, I'm still couple hours away from that. So I
Yeah,
think my wife doesn't work, so we were talking as the kids get older about just everyone going with and trying to work that into it some way. So like there's some things like I try to go to FDIC almost every year. Like there's a little bit of you got to have time to be a fireman with other firemen.
Yep.
and then the kids come, later or something. But I don't know, trying to find a balance in those things before we've even hit that point. Like we were talking before, your kids are pretty much the same age as mine, and trying to get ahead of the game, I guess.
Yeah.
Having a I mean, there's people that'll go, 20 or 30 years and miss a lot of things because maybe you don't think about that and try to
Yeah.
balance those things early. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. Because I also, going down there on the instructor side requires like everything from me down there. And so, um, I gotta be all in when I'm there. And so that's challenging with the family back home. And so it's like once a year, my wife and the kids, it's like, yeah, like we may not hear from dad because he's just like all in focused here.
yeah,
And then when he comes home, he's he's all in at home. So,
yeah.
but that works for us, and everybody's different.
Oh,
So
absolutely, yeah.
these guys that travel every weekend and they got a family. It's just like, man, that's incredible. Don't know how you do it, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
They've got a spouse or a partner that you know is solid in the foundation, takes care of things at home while dad's doing what he needs to do. That's awesome. Dad
Maybe I
all around.
gotta ask my old man one of these days about that because I don't remember him. Like my dad trained, my dad went to classes. It's not like he didn't. We just never noticed that. We didn't
Yeah,
feel like he was absent. And then
sure.
the conferences, like my mom would take us down there and we would catch the tail end of it, and
Yeah,
so it worked out in that way. But yeah, maybe he did something right because I never noticed him being gone. But I know he was. I know he did stuff.
yeah.
Like looking back or talking to him now. But yeah,
That's awesome.
it's hard, man. Being really passionate about the fire service and making sure that there is no work life balance. I had Corley Moore
No.
on, and he said that, and that really hit home. Like there is no work life balance. It's
Yeah,
family. That's what's important.
yeah,
And it's hard to be passionate about the fire service and make sure that that's not the end. That's not everything. That your family is really the most important thing. So
yeah,
I think that's a constant struggle for anyone that's passionate.
for sure.
So the last question I have in like at least like the specific ones for you, and it's outside of what we've kind of been talking about, and it's shift meals.
Yeah,
So I know that's way out of what we've been talking about, but I've noticed it comes in waves. I think in every place. I've worked for 3 fire departments now over the course of my career, and then I've experienced 2 other ones with my dad, and I've noticed that the places where people cook, both meals seem the most healthy, and even if they're cooking food that's not necessarily healthy. And
yeah.
I was kind of curious about what your shift life is like, and if you guys cook, if you bring your own meals, if you do those kinds of things, and how do you balance, time with the crew, but still, staying on a diet plan.
Yeah, so the department that I work for now, the Nampa Fire, man, that kitchen table is part of our culture, and they are big. I mean, they call it family time, and yeah, that place is sacred. So, I hear, talk to other firefighters, and it's like, yeah, man, at my station, dinner time, guys just grab their food and then they go sit in the recliner or they go to their room, like they leave, right? They scatter. And it's like, oh my God. Like if you get up from the table and try to start dishes too soon at one of our kitchen tables, you're gonna have a senior man like laying into you. And it is like hand slap on the table. This is family time, barring like catching a run and phones are down. Like this is our time. And that's like just for dinner. Um, So again, like that's a sacred thing for my department, big part of our culture, and it's pretty cool. So we cook all of our meals. We typically, it's everyone pitches in. So I worked at Station One for a while, which was our big house that had a truck company, an engine, battalion, a squad, and an ambulance. So like cooking
Big
there,
house is an understatement, my God.
yeah.
That's a
So
lot of
I mean,
people.
dude, a lot of personalities, and that kitchen table got crowded,
That's
and it
awesome,
it
though.
got it got rowdy, and it was a ton of fun. And if you were a new guy, man, like you know, it's a good time. But so yeah, cooking meals there. It was real simple. It was a question in the morning. What do people want? And yeah, everything was cooked for dinner. Lunches, pretty much everybody was on their own. And so, if you're doing a store run at Station One, there's a pot that everybody pitches into, and then we're gonna go get breakfast stuff, and then we're gonna get stuff for dinner. Lunch is typically leftovers of some sort from the night or the shift before. Or like for me, like I always packed my own lunch. Bringing in my own food, that is one controllable for me, at least for lunch, that I can control like what I eat. I don't have to rely on leftovers because who knows, like if they're gonna be there, right? Like
Yeah.
A or C shift, man, they sure do like our food. Um, so lunch, when we think about like health and wellness and fitness, like especially in the fire service, like there's very um, we can only control so many things. And what you're putting in your face and your meals is one of them. So lunch, I make those at home. I bring them in. And so that's good. And then when it comes to deciding like our shift meals, it's like with my company, we're starting like with a protein. It's like what kind of like protein source you want, and then we build a meal around it. And each kind of member has like their specialty that they like to do, and we just get a constant rotation. Like I think we eat pretty good, and we're willing. We kind of had this conversation. Like we're willing to pay a little bit more to eat good, and that's important to us. I'm not sure if that's answering your question,
No,
but
it is. I absolutely. I mean, you're able to do something with lunch, right? And it's. I mean, again, cooking something is always going to be better. I mean, even if it's
yeah,
something that's not traditionally good for you, if you cook it, at least it's better than going somewhere and having it process, yeah, whatever, all that other stuff. But
yeah.
um,
For my company, how we're building those meals, we start with a protein, and then we pick something green, and which is typically like a salad veggie of some sort, and then like we'd call like a carbohydrate. It's gonna be your potato or your rice, kind of whatever would go with the meal. But that's pretty common. And when I'm cooking, if it has more than four ingredients, like I'm out.
uh,
Um, the people that show up with like this huge recipe that is going to take 2 hours to prep. I'm not interested in that. I realize that's a good meal, but I want a meal that we can cook pretty quickly because I got stuff I want to do.
yeah,
Like
I feel you.
my job isn't to be in the kitchen all day. I want to be in my turnouts. I want to be out running calls. If I'm not running calls, I want to be training. And so if I'm cooking, it's real simple, or it's gonna be a crock pot or something on the smoker that it's
Yeah.
like George Foreman, man, we're gonna set it, forget it.
Yep.
And then when the day starts winding down, we're all gonna reconvene at the kitchen table and do it. Like I'm not gonna I don't want to lose my day in the kitchen.
Yeah, dude, I feel you. I mean, there's definitely some days where I'm in that intermediate, and then we definitely got some guys that are like a 2.5 hour prep. You're like, how are
Yeah.
you still in the? But whatever.
Yeah.
Dude, Instant Pot. That was a
Yeah.
game changer for us
Yeah.
until it got broken. But it was awesome. Like it would take you 45 minutes to make a meal, and even if it
Yep.
was like more than a couple ingredients, like that thing was amazing. We need to get another one of those, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, so like real easy go-tos, man. Like I just did ribs this last round, Like dude, it is like
They're
it's
cursed for
so
us.
easy. Oh, really?
Totally cursed. It's an ongoing
Wow.
joke. You can't even look at them at the grocery store. Like when we get a new guy and they're like, "Hey, ribs are buy one get one," we're smacking them in the hand. Like,
Yeah,
don't you dare bring up ribs.
yeah,
And then
that's
there's
funny,
there's these
man.
weird frozen yeast rolls that somebody got too, that are cursed for us.
Oh
We
no.
got two of them. That's it. But yeah,
Wow,
dude, I love ribs. Don't get me
like
wrong though. And
it's easy. Like spare ribs
yeah,
are like dirt cheap, man. At least where we're at right now, and can put them on the smoker like all day low,
yeah,
and like they're gonna turn out good. Pork shoulder, man, like dirt cheap, man. You guys want to do pulled pork tonight? Yep, like
yeah,
that goes on the smoker, or if you don't have one, it's in the crock pot all day,
yeah,
like low and slow. Same thing, like I cook brisket. I said we got a smoker, but like brisket when that's on sale, like $3 a pound,
yeah,
man. Like I put a brisket on the night before, and it rolls for like 18 hours, and dinner time the next day, that thing is good to go. Especially at Station One of the big house, like you got a 15-pound brisket. Yeah, that was, a $50 cut of meat, but a 15-pound brisket feeds a house of 12
yeah,
pretty good.
yeah.
And
We
no one complains
yeah,
about it.
we only got four guys, so for
Yeah.
us, like it's hard for some of those things. But we're at
Yeah.
that point too. I think now where it's like I'll spend a little more money. We're lucky though; they actually take pretty good care of us. We got a grocery store that pretty much every station goes to now,
Oh, yeah.
and they know we show up around 7:30 or 8 in the morning, and they're putting buy one get one stickers on everything for
Sure.
us. Like they're pretty cool to us.
That's awesome.
So
That's
we're
cool.
lucky.
That's cool.
Just no
Yeah.
ribs.
No ribs, man. What's the story behind the ribs?
Every time someone tries to cook ribs, you never eat them. That's the joke. You'll
Oh,
never touch them. So whether it's a call or whether it's they get ruined because like the
yeah.
smoker get like we just use an electric smoker like
Yeah.
otherwise nobody's pit bossing it. So like the
Sure.
electric smoker will shut off or the temperature will go through the
Yeah.
roof or something
Yeah.
like that. One guy tried them in the oven and the oven shut off
Sure.
and it's just been an on before even I worked there. Like it's been an
Okay.
ongoing thing, and
I
every
got
time
you now.
someone tries, they're like, "We're gonna push it. We're doing ribs because they're
Man.
like $1 for a slab of them or
Yeah.
something like that." They're like, "Yeah, we'll
Dude.
try it." Never
Yeah.
works.
Oh man, I was so hoping it'd be like, yeah, in 2015, guy burnt down the firehouse doing ribs. So, we don't do ribs
It
anymore.
wouldn't
But
shock me. I mean, based
yeah.
on how unlucky those things
Yeah.
are. Like, I'm still trying to find the food that has that starts fires somewhere in the town. Like, I would cook that every day. Like, I don't know what that is yet.
Yeah.
It used to be well, I shouldn't say used to be. My old man used to tell me that pasta was one of the things for them. Every time they made pasta, so they'd eat mastacholi and they'd be sitting there like, oh, I'm gonna go to bed now, and then they'd get a
Yeah.
fire, and it's
Sure.
like, damn it, every time,
Oh man, if you find that food, man, we'll have it every night.
every night, I would every
Yep.
single night.
Yep. It's awesome.
All right, so these are my like closing questions. So I'll go through those, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. So first one, what is one mistake that you've made in your career and learned from?
Yeah, I thought about that and made a lot of mistakes, right? You win or learn, right? Um, and but to kind of keep it on like the fitness side of things, early on in my career was thinking that the job should be the motivation for everybody. And it should, but it isn't always the case. And so standing up there on your soapbox and beating your drum and saying for them, right, the job, like you need to be eating good, you need to be working out because this job is going to kill you. That is all absolutely correct, but it doesn't hit with everybody. And so early on, having a tone or just thinking like that can really drive a lot of people away. You can corner yourself, wind up kind of being the enemy. Um, And then kind of as the years went on, realizing that, if we're trying to keep people in shape and, we just want the best for them, be it, fitness, health, and wellness, figuring out what motivates them. And what I learned was, it was pretty common. So for many, it's the job. And for others, it's what they're doing off the job. So it's their recreation. Like around here, a lot of people are hunting. These, maybe they're into triathlons, maybe they're power lifters. Like those are the things that can motivate them to stay in shape. And then, some just want to look good naked. And whatever the motivation is, like if that's the thing keeping them um, coming into the gym, working out, trying to maintain their fitness, trying to fight off like the years as they build up, like I'm good with it. And so as if you're a pure fitness trainer or someone working with people in your department, figuring out that motivation and then tying in what you want them to do and relating it to what motivates them. Like, hey, like this workout, we're pushing sleds and we're gonna carry sandbags up and down the stairs. And then when they come back from their hunting trip and they're like, dude, this was the first time like I haven't had a difficult time packing out my elk. Man, when's our next workout? And you just connected this thing that's going to make them better at their job, but it connected with them with what they're doing off duty. And now they're in like, hey, man, that's going to make me better at hunting. That's cool because it's also going to make you better at the job. So, like, that works for me. So, early on, that was probably a mistake I made. And then as I learned, it's like, dude, just trying to find a way to connect this fitness thing so that it makes an impact in their lives, the most, whatever means the most to them, because it's also going to help when it comes to the fire ground.
Dude, solid answer. Oh my god. Yeah. uh, Next question is so the context of this one. I feel like not everybody always gets an opportunity to highlight somebody maybe that came in early in their career and they never saw again, or came in left, or set them in the right path. And I try to ask this question to give an opportunity to acknowledge that. So it's who influenced you the most early in your career.
I mentioned Jake Ives and Chase Jablonski earlier. Um, just the influence that they had on the beginning of my career and like the trajectory, right? So like that's probably what I miss most about working for my previous department is not being able to work with those guys. Fortunately, we're neighbors, neighboring departments, and we now have a joint training facility. So we get to like we get to see each other. But they made a huge impact on kind of showing me the ropes and opening up my eyes to some really important things that is now the filter or lens that I see the fire service through. We talked about it. It's the works of Andy Fredericks. It's the local fools group that it's like, man, your department isn't putting on training, isn't doing the stuff that you want. Yeah, there's a group of like people just like you that get together a couple times a year, right? And so, I think the influence that they had on me, and then the people I got to meet, like Gary Lane, and then getting linked up with someone like David Rhodes, and just all the different people that a nobody from nowhere in Idaho. Pretty fortunate. So yeah, those guys had a big impact. Another influence, obviously, like my buddy Frank. Um, Man, we've been through a lot. He brought me in, um, and now like that full circle, it's like, man, how did this happen again? We're working on the same engine, like he's had a big influence and pretty fortunate there too.
Awesome. Yeah. Have you ever lost your passion for the fire service? And if you did, How'd you get it back? And then what do you do to stay passionate about the fire service?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I I hear a lot, especially go to conference. There's always someone that gets up there and says, "Ah, man, it's something along the lines of, there's never been a day that I didn't want to go to work in the fire service." And I always think I'm like, that's awesome. And then I have to be honest with myself. I'm like, I've had days, man. I've had days like that's the honest truth. And they really started happening once I had kids. Like walking out that door, leaving that 2 and 4 year old some days when they just want to hug you and they don't want you to leave. Like, man, that makes it really tough. Um, so that, those are the days that make it tough and lose my passion. I don't think I've ever lost my passion for the job. I've gotten frustrated for sure. And one of the things that hit home for me early on was Aaron Fields. Tended his nozzle forward. I don't even know how many times now, but beyond the techniques that he's showing, there's a lot of small things that he's doing that I pick up on as far as like how he's teaching and philosophy and those things. And one class he talked about his logo, right? And I believe it's like a Alaskan or like a king
It's
salmon.
a salmon,
I'm
yeah.
probably
Yeah.
okay. So he goes into the story of why is our logo this, and he talks about how the purpose of the salmon is to swim upstream their entire life until they get there, they mate, and they die. And so when I get frustrated, I think about my purpose in the fire service, and it's to continue to keep swimming upstream. So when like things, I get really frustrated, it's like, no, the purpose is to continue swimming upstream. And then when I get up there and I mate, like, that's it. That's the end of the line. And I'm fine with that. That's what I've accepted as my purpose. When I talk to our new people that are getting frustrated, they want to make nozzle changes or make big changes in our department, and they're running into people that just keep saying no, and they're like, how do you keep going? It's like, because that's the purpose, man. You just keep swimming upstream, because if what you're trying to do is for the right reasons, it's for the right people, and you're doing it because you care, then keep swimming upstream. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. So that's what I have to remind myself when things get tough.
That's probably the sound bite of this show. I mean, you've had a couple, but yeah, it's dude, I love it. Yeah. If you wanted to give someone a sense of how fire service culture should work by meeting one person, alive or dead, who would it be?
Uh, yeah, man. God, he's getting a lot of. Hopefully, he doesn't listen to this because his ego or his head will get big. But it's going to be Frank Beauvais. He's the captain of Engine 6 Nampa. He is a huge personality in what I like to say a small man, but he encompasses the culture and the values of the fire service. Um, he continues to remind us just this is a blue collar job. And if at the end of the day, we're sweating in our turnouts and we're coming in dirty, like we're doing it right. And so the way he runs his company, uh, like he will work through lunch, which drives me like crazy. So we kind of like butt heads on that. He's like, oh, we got to take a break because Haskins has got to eat. Um, uh, there's a lot of things that I align with, and we get sent a lot of riders, and we always get like a probie, um, which is awesome, um, because it's our ability to instill that culture, the passion, the things. And when I think about what was done for me, my first year at Caldwell and those guys, it's like I want that experience for somebody else. I didn't realize how special it was until, later. And it's like now, right? The job is to pass it on and to make that truly a unique experience. And if we can get to them before the mutts do, like that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think yeah, I'd say Engine Six, Captain Beauvais. Like if I were to send anybody, I'd send him go ride with him, and he'll show you what it's all about.
I love it. Last one. Best part of the job.
The people, man. Uh, it's your crew. It's your department. Even the ones that you know really you know cause you to swim upstream. Um, and then the citizens we serve. It's the people, man. And there's nothing else like it. Every day is different. Um, that's what makes it special. And if you get frustrated, and I think about doing, it's like, man, I could be doing something else. It's like, no way. Oh man, like the people I get to work with, and then the people I get to serve, and you see, you can come home proud at the end of the day, hang your hat up, and say like, I made a difference in someone's life. What I do for a living, well, it sure doesn't make a lot of money, makes a difference.
Hell yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, cool. Eric, hang out in the green room after I close off here. But thank
All right,
you again for coming on. It was
yeah, man.
super educational, and it was really cool to talk to you. And I hope whoever's listening, you definitely got something out of it. I posted that article that he just wrote for fire engineering in the chat here. I'll probably share it on my page too if you want to read a bit further. And then, if you just go on, you're only on Instagram, right? Didn't I pick that up? Right.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of hate social media,
I know.
but
And I feel you. And then we're on this, but
no, Instagram, Brotherhood and Training. That's a platform that we can share, kind of what we do and connect with people. So, kind of a necessary evil. But yeah, you can find us at Brotherhood and Training, and then Firehouse Strength and Conditioning.com would be a website to check out.
there you go. Cool. Thanks for listening, everyone. And thanks again, Eric.
You bet. Thank you.